Hi, everybody. My name is Cindy Rack. I'm with Keller Williams, and who joins me tonight is DJ Hamill from Victorian Finance Group. And we thank you for being here for our home buying workshop. We hope that you can get a lot of benefits from it. Our contact information is with Rob at the library. So if you have any questions and you need additional information, you can get it from him. But I'm going to start first by sharing my screen and bringing the presentation up for everybody to see. Share. Um, and we're going to the keynote. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to make our picture smaller since we are, make that smaller first and then hit play. Okay, so thank you for attending the workshop. We're going to basically talk tonight about all the different options when you have a workshop as far as home buying is concerned. We're going to be talking about financing, location, what your realtor does, how do you find properties, and we are anticipating that it should take maybe about 45 minutes to an hour to complete. And then we have any questions that you can ask as we go along. You can interrupt, feel free to do that. And if you don't have any questions, you can, and you could you want to wait till the end, we can do that also. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is renting versus home purchasing. When you rent, you have no responsibility, right? Except you need to pay your rent on time. You need to take care of the place as if it was your own and also be a good neighbor. Those are the three important things that you need to do. But as far as maintenance is concerned, there's no maintenance on the property for your, as a tenant is concerned, because the landlord has to take care of all that, right? You want to notify them immediately because the longer you wait, the worse a problem can get. So it's important and responsibility to notify your landlord anytime there's any maintenance issues, but you don't have to worry about any of the cost. There isn't any debt other than the monthly payment that you make and your security deposit. You can pick up and move when you want within your lease. And there's a downside, you're not putting down any roots, you're not building equity for the future. So that's renting versus buying. You are building equity into a home because you purchase now, and usually, 9 times out of 10, that home is going to be worth more money in the future. So you're building some equity, you're building roots, and you're establishing yourself and maybe your family a sense of accomplishment, because it is an American dream to purchase a property, and you definitely have tax advantages with it. But it is a very big responsibility. Now, when something goes wrong, you're not calling the landlords, you're calling the contractor, and you're going to be the one that's going to be paying for it, right? So there is a lot of responsibility there with the maintenance. You're going to have debt because most likely you're going to have a mortgage, and those mortgages are not taken lightly. If you miss your rent payment, you're evicted. You have to find another place to rent. But if you miss your mortgage payment, then you're going to foreclosure, and it goes on your record, and then it's very difficult to do anything, purchase a car or anything when you have a foreclosure on your record. So it's important that you understand that you're taking on a huge responsibility with the debt. And there is some cash that you have to use to purchase a house, which we're going to get into a lot more detail later. You have a down payment, you have a mortgage payment, you have closing costs, you have taxes, and you have insurance that you have to pay for. So the location is really important. You have to think about where do I want to live? Do I want to live in walking distance to shops and restaurants and schools and things of that nature? How close do you want to be to your neighbors? What about transportation? Do you want to live by the T or a bus line? What schools maybe you have children and you want to think about school districts? Do you want to live by your family? Or I had one client that her family was in Carnegie, and she wanted to move to Penn Hills. And I said, why? Why do you want to move to Penn Hills? You're going to need them for babysitting and support. They're like, no, you don't know my family. We want to live as far away from them as possible. So it really all depends on your family situation, right? Do you want to live close to work? And a lot of people like to do that, but you have to think, is this job going to be long term? What if, very few jobs today are lifetime jobs. And so you might purchase a home based on your job and then find out that you're going to get a job on the other side of town 5 years down the road. And then you also have to take into consider location, because if you're purchasing, the price of homes were more expensive and the taxes are higher in the suburbs than what you find in the city. Now in the city, actually, we're finding that the price of homes are going way up in certain neighborhoods, but the taxes are still low because they're in the city. So it really depends on your income and how you want to be able to spend your money, what type of home you would buy, and where that would be. There are several types of homes that you could purchase. There's a ranch home, which is a one level living. You have two or more stories. You can live in a townhouse that has a homeowners association, a condominium. They have planned communities, which are patio homes. And also there is options to buy investment property. Like maybe you have a duplex, you want to start off purchasing a duplex and you live in one side, and you can let the tenant pay, most of your mortgage. And so it's the costs for your living are a lot less. And you're starting to build equity in that property. And then when you find another house, then you could rent the other side of the duplex and start building into an investment situation. So if you're the one thing that I have been finding is that there is no new construction in the new home buyer market. The builders cannot make a lot of money on properties that are 150 to $250,000. So you'll find most new construction is 300,000 or above. And when you're purchasing a home, you have to realize that you're not new construction and that you're not going to get everything that you want. Like if you're building your own home, you can make a list and have the builder check off everything that you want. But when you're purchasing something that is already built, you have to think, what is my most important needs that I have to have versus what my wants are. So maybe you have a couple kids and you want to make sure you have a garage because in the wintertime when you have to follow the kids in, you don't want to have to worry about cleaning the snow off your car. You want to be able to get into a warm car, where somebody else says garage is not that important to me. So you have to think about what your needs and wants are based on your particular situation. So there are three different ways to purchase a home. You can purchase a home through a realtor, and you want to make sure that you get your own buyer agent realtor and do not call the realtor on the sign. That is legal in Pennsylvania. It's called dual agency, and a listing agent can certainly put a listing up, and somebody could be driving by or on Zillow, see it and drive by and call you and say, I don't have a realtor. Could you show me this house? And a lot of people do that because, as a matter of fact, it happened to me twice this week. People called me because they said, oh, well, I don't want a buyer agent. I don't need a buyer agent. I'm just going to call off the listing. And I says, well, do you realize that in Pennsylvania, the listing agent then automatically becomes your agent, and and then they have to back off a little bit because they're representing both. So you're really paying the seller's paying for your representation, and you're not getting good representation because they can't really represent you solely. And neither one of those people knew that. So the laws are very difficult. And before I was a realtor, I didn't understand that neither. You cannot be a single person as an owner purchasing a property, because the Pennsylvania law says if it's on the multi-list, the realtor is your realtor, whether you like it or not. So I always tell people it's legal. I don't feel comfortable doing it. I don't think it's ethical. And so I recommend that you call somebody and have them show you the property. So that's one way that you can purchase a home. The second one is a for sale by owner. And it's interesting. I find that if I'm working with a client and they sign a buyer agency agreement with me, and they happen to see on Zillow that there's a for sale by owner, if they call the for sale by owner by themselves and say, I have a realtor that's representing me, the owner says, well, then you're going to have to pay the realtor fee because I'm not paying it. But what I also found is if I have a client and I say to them, don't call the for sale by owner, give me their phone number. And if I call the for sale by owner, and I say I have a client that I would like to bring to your property, 9 times out of 10, I'll say to them, would you pay the buyer commission? And they say yes. So why they say yes to me and no to the buyers, I have no idea, but that's another way that you can purchase it. So typically, which we'll get into a little bit later, the way purchases are made, the seller pays both the buyer agency commission and the listing commission for the seller agent. So they pay both sides. So as typically as a buyer, you don't have to pay the commission for your agent. The seller is doing that. Unless it's a for sale by owner that does not want to pay the commission, then you would have to pay the 3% for them to represent you. Then the third way is new construction, which I said in a new home buying market, there's very few in that 100 to 150 to $250,000. Most new construction is on the higher end. we're going to talk a little bit about how much you can afford. And I have DJ on the call because several of these slides, he's going to talk about different types of loans that you have. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how do you determine how much you should pay for a mortgage, what you can afford. So we're going to give you an example just to make it a little bit easier. So let's assume you have a salary of $60,000, which a year, which is about $5,000 a month, and that's before taxes. And the price of your home shouldn't be more than 2.5 times your salary. So you think about that, and that would bring you up to about $150,000 max that you would want to purchase for a property. Now, how I calculate it is the mortgage payment should be as close to 25% of your monthly gross income as possible, meaning 25% or lower of your gross monthly income. So that would be for a $5,000 a month salary, that would be $1,250 a month. I wouldn't go over 28%, while many banks, including DJ, what you can go up to what, 33% now?
I mean, it does vary, but I mean, you technically, it could go as high as 45%.
Wow.
I wouldn't
So,
advise it, but you could.
wow. So
But
as you can see,
that only works for people with large down payments. Like if you have a large down payment, they're not going to let that happen if you're a first time home buyer putting 3% down. Then you
mhm,
would be limited to probably about 30%. But if
okay,
you're a more experienced buyer that's putting a large down payment, then you got more leeway with your debt to income ratio. You can get away with a little bit more. But
okay,
in payments with, like the first thing I always say to people, it really doesn't matter what I can qualify you for. It's really what's important is what you're comfortable paying, and maintaining your life. I mean, because nobody wants to be house poor,
mhm,
and you don't want to be stuck that all you can do is pay the payment, utilities, and can't do anything else. So you definitely want to consider your lifestyle when you're agreeing to what you can afford. So, what we usually go over what the maximum is you can qualify for, but then we have the conversation of what are you comfortable affording? Because it's
right,
two different things,
right.
you know.
And I found like I've had a couple recent clients who are young, they're young women, both of them. They're both around 24, 25. They're making probably $4,000 a month, about $48,000 a year. And really, could they get a mortgage? 25% of that is $1,000 a month before their taxes. And they said, by the time I looked at my budget, and you take the taxes out, and then I have my school loans, and then I have my car loan, and I have my car insurance, and I'm going to have to start buying food and paying utilities. I don't even know if I could afford $1,000 a month, because they're not just looking at the purchase of the house. They're also saying, I'm going to have to put some money away for repairs where I didn't have to do that with rent, right? Usually that repair money, they'd be getting a facial or their nails done or going on vacation, going away for the weekend with their friends. A lot of that stuff gets eliminated because you're putting some money away in case something goes wrong with the house. And so you really have to take a look at your budget and what your expenses are to do this. But this is just general, right? So we want to stay around 25% of your monthly gross income. And that includes that 25% includes the mortgage payment, your taxes, and the insurance payment. So it's usually referred to as PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Your debt ratio shouldn't be more than 40% of your gross monthly income. So that would be 40% of $5,000 would be $2,000. So that would be your credit cards, your school loans, your car payments, all that kind of stuff. And then, you have to keep in mind that home values can go down, especially if you're buying at the top of the market, which today I would say is at the top of the market. However, if you're going to be in it for any length of time, you're going to go through that downturn and then back up on the other side. So currently today we are in a seller's market where there are very few homes for sale. The inventory is very low, and there are maybe 15 buyers for every listing that goes on the market. DJ, would you say it's accurate that 3 out of 4 homes are going into a bidding war right now?
I'd say it's pretty close to that.
Yeah.
And it's I would say at a minimum half the time that people are calling me, the first thing they say is it's multiple bid situation, and anymore pretty much every situation is multiple.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
mean,
I just had two clients in Bethel Park recently. There was a house on the market for $300,000, and they bid $325,000. They had a conventional loan of 20% down with DJ. I mean, it's going to be a great thing. And they were outbid, you know, somebody come in and bid $27,000 over asking and waived all the inspections. And I don't recommend that for any first time home buyer to waive inspections. But so he lost it. And then just last week, one of my neighbors, she put an offer in a property in Bethel Park over on Hillcrest, and they were asking 310,000, and she put an offer in for 330, 20,000 over asking, and she lost that one. So the market is really, really at the top right now.
It is. You're seeing it at the top, and if you don't have the cash, though, the one thing you're seeing too is if they go too far above the list price, they're not going to appraise. If you go too high,
Right.
you know, but generally they're going into it knowing there's a chance it won't appraise. Because I've had a few situations, just like for easy math, like where they went under contract for 220 and the original list price was 190 and it appraised at 205. So I mean, it did appraise 15,000 over the original list price, but it didn't hit that, you know, 210, 220 mark they were trying to go when they went like 30, 35,000 over the list. So there's a danger with that as well, unless you
Yeah.
have the cash. And you
Right.
know, and in my side, that's usually the most difficult thing is coaching people through and documenting down payment.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah. Yeah, I know. You know, one deal I just did a listing that I had, the sellers, the buyer actually, I had the listing and it was in West Mifflin. And, you know, the house ended up going over $300,000, which in West Mifflin is really rare. This was a beautiful, beautiful home. And we were afraid it wasn't going to appraise. So we asked the buyers if they actually had more cash, would they pay the buyer commission? And you know, on their side of the so that they wanted to offer $301,000, and we had it on the market for 287. So he says, what if we made the sale 293, and then you take that extra $8,500 and you pay your realtor buyer fee and take that off the seller's side of the cost sheet, and then so the seller still is going to net like $300,000 because you're paying part of the commission. And they actually had the money to do that. Typically, the buyer does not have the extra money to do those kind of considerations.
I've also seen people write it up where if the buyer does have some cash, that if they go over the original list, that they'll put a number saying if it doesn't appraise, they'll come up with this much cash. Like if it doesn't appraise by $20,000, they're willing to come up with $10,000 max additional out of pocket if it doesn't appraise, stuff like that.
Right.
But again, that all works if you've got cash.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I had a deal done in Houston, PA recently. It was a listing, and we were very shocked and disappointed. And as a matter of fact, even the buyer's mortgage broker and the buyer was shocked at a price for $20,000 under what they purchased it for, which was only $235,000, and it was a 5-bedroom, huge old Victorian, totally remodeled, and the guy only appraised it at $215,000 or something, and we sold it for $235,000. So the seller actually had enough of cash, the buyer did, where they split it. He come up 10,000, the seller came down 10,000, and that's how we did that deal. Okay, mortgages. So I'm going to let DJ take over the next couple slides. Okay.
Well, obviously today, I mean, we got historically low rates, so very little in the way of variable interest rates out there. Almost everything's fixed. And it's just right now, it only makes sense. I mean, you're seeing 30-year fixed rates as low as 2.625 fixed. So considering a variable just really doesn't make any sense when rates are that low. You know, and if you do make the additional payments, you can knock generally, you know, one extra payment a year on a 30-year term. If you started at the very beginning, well, you know, knock about 6.5 years off of the term of the loan. So it is a big benefit to be able to start doing that. You just got to start doing it immediately. Let's see. A lot of things you're seeing right now is you're seeing 15, 20, and 30 years. You're seeing a lot of people drop to 15-year rates, but your terms just because, again, rates are so low. You can get a fixed 15-year rate at 2.5, 2.375. I mean, so it's very inexpensive money. But the big thing with mortgages for most people, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, is down payment. And there's plenty of different products out there that will allow for little to no down payment.
I think that's on the next slide. There we go, down payments.
Yeah, you can be as little as 3% for a conventional loan and not necessarily be a first-time home buyer, but you get some nice discounts on mortgage insurance and the rate if you are a first-time home buyer. If you put the 20% down, you will eliminate the mortgage insurance. Then,
So can you stop just for a minute there, DJ?
Mhm.
Do you know what mortgage insurance is, Sabrina?
I actually do not. There's a way to
Okay.
go over that.
Okay, so private mortgage insurance is that when you put less, years ago, everybody put 20% down on a property, but properties were $20,000 back then. They weren't that expensive. Today, it's very difficult to put 20% down on a property. So a lot of the banks will go under 20%. But when they do that, they feel that the person that's purchasing the property does not have a lot of stake in it. And if things go awry, it's easier for them to walk away than to try to fight to keep their home. So anything that's under 20%, the bank requires you to pay private mortgage insurance. Now, that covers you in case, your house forecloses. It doesn't actually cover you, it covers the bank. So you're paying for it. But if you foreclose on the property, you lose the house, the bank gets it, and their mortgage insurance pays them the balance of the loan. So they kind of get both ends.
But it
And
doesn't pay the balance of the loan, it pays a percentage of it.
a
That's why it's
percentage
paid
of it.
down to, yeah, generally mortgage insurance is intact till you get to 78% loan to value. And then that's when it naturally falls off. If you want to force the issue and pay for an appraisal, then that's where the 20% you can get it to remove that 80% loan to value, 20% equity
Right. Unless you have a FHA loan, which is a government backed loan, and then that mortgage insurance stays the whole length of the
for
loan
life.
for
Right.
life. Right.
Unless you put 10% down, then it's only 11 years.
Okay.
So,
Does
and
that make
then-
sense, Sabrina, or do you?
I guess my only question about down payments is that since you guys like both work in this field, is there any recommendations for what you would recommend a first-time home buyer for putting down as a down payment? Like, is it better to do as much as possible, or like what helps like with deals and everything, I guess?
In my opinion, 10% down is the ideal number. I mean, unless you truly do have 20% and you have reserves afterwards. So, I mean, if you truly have the ability to put 20% down or 25% down actually gives you the best rate. If you have that kind of money, most people don't, and
Okay.
then you don't want to drain the bank and take every dime to put 20% down, because when you buy your first house, there's a whole lot more expense involved than just bringing that check to closing.
Yeah, definitely.
So you don't want to drain yourself. So ideally, for the best interest rate and your best deal and most lenient underwriting is 10% down, because you get a really good deal. The cost of the EMI is low because you're putting 10% down. And believe it or not, the banks and the investors, they give you a better rate because they like the fact that the loan is insured. So it's really the equivalent of putting more than 20% down because it insures them to about 78%. So it generally gives you a decent discount on the interest rate, and the monthly MI is not that bad. The good thing is, over the last several years, most mortgage insurance companies went away, and now over the last 5 years, there's now 5 or 6 major mortgage insurance companies out there. So it's making the price much more competitive, as far as the cost of mortgage insurance.
Now, the other thing too to keep in mind, if you're thinking about investment property, if you get it in your own name, you can put as low as you want down. Like DJ said, for you, your interest rates are better. There's different things, but the interest rate's so low right now. If you do purchase it and put it in your own name, I would put as little down as I possibly can, because the tenants are going to be paying that mortgage payment for you, not you, right?
Yeah.
So if you're doing it as an investment property, so the tenants are paying that. It all depends on your cash flow. You have to look at the numbers, individual numbers, and find out, okay, how much is my mortgage payment? I mean, but even like $5,000 only equates to like an extra $15 a month on the rent, on the mortgage,
Yeah.
because the interest rates are so low. So I would say if it's an investment property, I would say put as little down as you can, because, and as long as you can cash flow.
Okay.
But the minimum you can get away with on like a single family investment is 15% down, is the least you can get away with if it's a straight up investment property.
If you put it in an LLC,
No, I
right?
mean, if it's in your personal
Even
name,
if
the
it's in your
minimum,
personal name.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because most Fannie Mae lenders aren't going to let you put it in an LLC. This is where, for investors, you get different advice. I mean, once you put it into an LLC, you start tinkering with commercial financing more
Right.
than
And at that
residential.
point, you have to put 20% down. Like, so of all of my rentals are in an LLC, I have to put 20% down.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good
But
to
that's
know.
something we can talk about later, because we can talk about that after the workshop, because that's a whole nother workshop.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
On investing.
It's definitely a whole nother world than what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is
Um,
mainly was designed for the first time home buyer, but you're still going to gain a lot of benefit out of this. And then we can talk about investing later.
Okay, that works.
So DJ, you want to show the example here? So if we do purchase price.
Well, right now it's like the example that's up here is on a purchase price of 150,000. You want a down payment of 3%. The other thing when it comes to down payment is the thing that gets the most difficult is verifying where that money comes from. It has to be seasoned money, which means it's spent more than 60 days in an account. So seasoning in our world is time. So you want to make sure that the money that you're using for the down payment is in an account and can be verified. Doing the 3% down, you'd have a loan amount of the 145.5. And if you were doing 80% of the 150, be 120 loan amount, but that would be where your MI would fall off if you initiated it yourself. If you wait to just let it fall off naturally, it goes to 78% loan to value. The other thing you need to know about mortgage insurance is if you miss a payment or you're late on a payment, it is then defaulted to the lender to decide how long they want to keep the MI on the loan. They, in theory, could keep it for the life of the loan if you miss payments. So that's one thing they don't really talk about it. But if you miss payments, you put a lot of control in the fact that the lender can keep that MI on there for as long as they want once you technically violate the contract by making a late payment. So
yeah. So the key is make your payments and don't ever be late.
right.
That's like comes before any other thing that you pay is your mortgage. That's the most important.
And it has the greatest impact. It's going to have, and when you speak about that, just on, not that it's on here right now, but just the fact of how important your credit is. That if you have somebody that is buying a $150,000 home, putting 3% down, and they have a 780 credit score, they're getting that 2.6% rate. But if they have a 680 credit score, that rate goes to 3.5, 3.75. So it's 1 to 1.5 point difference in the interest rate. If your credit score is that low, you may still qualify for the loan with a 680, but you're going to pay a 1.5% higher rate. The mortgage insurance is going to cost twice as much. Even your homeowner's insurance costs more. Homeowners, the price of your homeowners is based off your credit score anymore. So there's a lot of things that are very important, like starting with paying your mortgage and keeping all your bills and everything on time. So that goes back to what Cindy was talking about earlier too, is, don't always go off what the bank or a lender tells you qualify for. You got to stick with what you're comfortable paying and that keeps your lifestyle intact, not what anybody's telling you that, hey, you can afford to buy this $400,000 home, when you're saying, hey, in my mind, my budget 250 is all I can afford. Then stick to your guns and know who you are when you're in the process of buying a house and where you're going to be comfortable. So
okay. So FHA mortgages, this is not something that you would do probably as an investor. Most likely you'd get more of a conventional loan, but let's talk about FHA mortgages, DJ.
Well, FHA is a government insured loan. So the guidelines are a little bit easier than a conventional loan. So if you have a lower credit score, generally, if you start falling below that 680 credit score, you're going to fall out of a conventional loan and fall into an FHA loan. The good thing is FHA loans are very low as far as interest rate, but VA loans carry a 1.75% upfront funding fee, just like USDA or a VA loan. And Sabrina, what that means is it's a fee that's financed in the loan, but on a $100,000 loan, that's $1,750 in additional closing costs that you are financing in your payment. So it is a significant cost. So if you don't have to go that way, it's best not to. But sometimes this is the best option depending on your credit score or your down payment. The nice thing about FHAs with 3.5% down, you can get up to 6% seller assist. Where on conventional loans with less than 10% down, you can only get 3% seller assist.
We'll talk about
seller
seller
assist
assist in a minute. I got the slide for that, I think.
Okay, I was going to explain what seller assist is, but I'll keep going. So anyway, that's where the FHA mortgage gets more appealing to a first-time home buyer that may not have enough money to close. Is 3.5% down, 6% seller assist eliminates a lot of cash that would be needed to close. The biggest downfall with FHA for a lot of people is the appraisal. If there's any, the houses prior to 1978, there's any chipping and peeling paint, there's a lead base, it's all over lead-based paint. That all those chipping and any peeling paint has to be repaired. Utilities do have to be on, appliances have to be working. Anything that has more than 2 steps should have railings. The windows have to be in operational condition. And basically no safety issues. Floor coverings have to be in good condition. So it's a little more strict than a conventional loan, but I mean, there's a good place for FHA loans because it does allow a lot of people to get into a home that otherwise wouldn't be able to. But the big thing about it is the monthly mortgage insurance cost is definitely higher than a conventional loan. It's the life of the loan. The MI on an FHA loan is there for 30 years. Unless you put 10% or more down, then it goes away after 11 years. It's not a percentage like a conventional loan. It's just a set term. So either you're going to pay it for 11 years or 30 years.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I didn't realize that. I thought it'd stay with the loan the whole time, not realizing if you put 10% down. But most FHA people aren't putting 10% down.
Most aren't, unless they got bad credit trouble and they're required to do so. The other thing about FHA, and this isn't something that I'm sure Cindy's a fan of hearing, but it'll actually allow you to go as high, if you got a decent credit score, to a 57.9% debt to income ratio, which is really high.
That's really, I would never let my client do that.
So that is almost 60% of your gross revenue in debt. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah, I would definitely coach my clients not to do that. I want my clients to be able to be in a home that they're comfortable in, that they're not going to get fights over the financing. Right. So I would never.
Which is why we touched on that earlier, but this is what this program does allow for. It will allow you to go that high.
Wow. Okay.
Not saying I recommend it. I'm just saying it can go.
Yeah. I mean, I learned something because I didn't realize they would allow it to go that high. Maybe because I just coach my clients right off the bat, don't let your debt ratio be more than a certain percentage. Right. Okay. So VA,
I was going to say this is where this. I was going to say this leads into the VA loans, which VA loans can actually have. There is no actual debt to income limit on an FHA loan. I've had FHA loans go as high as 65% debt ratios.
Wow.
Because now here's the interesting thing, is VA loans are 100% financing, and it has a one-time fee up front and then no mortgage insurance. It is the lowest default rate loan on the market. They have less foreclosures than any other kind of loan, and they are 0 down.
Wow.
Here's why, is when I said that about going as high as a 65% debt ratio sometimes works on a VA loan, is because they also do a residual income calculation. So they have a number per person in the household that you have to have dollars left over every month to support your house. So that's how they do it, is they know that if you have 3 kids, you have to have $3,200 left over in residual income. So sometimes you can actually have somebody with a VA loan that may have a 25% debt to income ratio, but doesn't qualify because they don't have enough residual income left.
Oh, I see.
So it's a different way to.
I like that calculation. I think everybody should use that.
But this way you could, in theory, I've seen got people go up to like 63, 64% debt to income because their income was high enough that they had
Right.
enough leftover income to still qualify.
Right. Right.
USDA loans, another 100% financing, and it has an upfront fee as well, like 2%. That's financed in the loan, and they have a monthly charge. They don't call it MI, but it is similar to MI, but it's really low. It's like 0.2%. So it's a very small. I mean, outside of a VA loan, a USDA loan is probably the second best loan on the market as far as cost, down payment, interest rate, anything like that. So
Right. And
um,
also one thing I noticed I didn't put in the slide here is they're not only for rural areas, but you have to have a smaller income, right? You have to be income qualified for that, correct?
there is an income limit, like in Washington or I think Beaver County for an individual. It's pretty liberal for like an individual. It's like 76,000 a year,
Oh,
and then it goes up depending on the number of people in the household. The only thing about it is if you have anybody in the household above the age of 18 that has a job, their income goes against the limit whether they're on the loan or not.
oh, wow. Okay.
So there's no stacking of 4 families in a house and
Right.
thing like that. It's not meant for that kind of thing. The nice thing is there's a lot of places sometimes USDA does work. It is you can type in the property address at a USDA's website, and it'll tell you if a property is qualified for USDA. Most places in Allegheny County do not. Like Washington County, the city of Washington is not, and Peters Township. Most of everything outside of that is USDA qualified.
Wow. Okay.
So there's quite a bit, and that's a 0%. You can get 6% seller assist. It's another one. It is very strict on its debt to income at 43% though. So it does keep a very strict debt to income ratio. The other thing about USDA is if you can put 20% down, and they see that after closing you had the ability to do so, it would disqualify you for the loan if you have too much money.
Okay.
So, and then we have rehab loans. Rehab loans can be very difficult. You can do an FHA rehab or a conventional rehab. The big kicker for most rehabs is you cannot do the work yourself. It has to be done by a contractor. And that's generally the thing that makes it hard to invest in something like this. By the time you buy it, pay commercial prices to do the rehab, the additional cost of the loan, because there's more fees involved in a rehab loan. The rates are usually a little bit higher because it's a much riskier loan. But they are out there, and for
Well,
the
they're
right
hard to
people.
get. Here's what I found they're hard to get is the contractors do not want to cooperate with you on these because they, I mean, I had one client who did this and my contractors said to me, don't ever do that to me again. But I had one client who bought a foreclosure house and she got a rehab loan. It was my niece. And I tried so hard to talk her out of that, but she insisted that she wanted this house. And, what happened is the bank will give the contractor. So we had to have the main contractor in there. We had to have an HVAC guy in there because their whole HVAC system had to be torn apart, which was $20,000 there. We had to have the whole electrical panel and it had to have sewers redone. So I had 4 contractors in there, but the bank will only work with one. So all the subs had to go under my main contractor. And then they gave my main contractor 10% to start. And then you have these 4 subs plus you and 10%, and you got to buy all these supplies. And they're like, that's nothing. And then before they can get their first payment, they can only get 2 draws and then a final payment. And they have to, with that, they have to have the inspector come out and inspect everything. So that all the jobs have to stop until the inspector inspects, and then you have to do another one. And they just said it's so much of a hassle, and they don't get enough money up front to buy all the supplies that they don't want to do that. So it's very difficult to find any contractors who will work with you on a rehab loan.
Just a quick question. So is the rehab loan only for foreclosures or what else would it
No,
fall under?
it's for anything, but
Oh,
regardless,
okay.
it's hard. It's hard to get a rehab loan because the contractors don't want to work with you on it.
And
Yeah,
when
that
I
makes
talk to
sense.
somebody about a rehab loan, I'm not trying to sell or talk anybody into it. It's almost like you're trying to talk them out of it. Like, make sure you understand everything you're asking to do, because you do need them. You can't be faint of heart and decide to get into that.
Right.
You do have to be organized. You got to meet the timelines. You've got a lot of balls up in the air to make that stuff happen.
Yeah. Okay. So let me take over here on the insurances because there are several types of insurance you have to think about when you purchase a home, where when you're renting, you have renter's insurance, and that just covers your material, any of your property inside the apartment. And it also covers you liability wise. If maybe you leave your tennis shoes out in the middle of the floor and somebody trips over it and breaks his ankle, that covers you for liability insurance. That's what renter's insurance is for. When you purchase a home, you have your homeowner's insurance, obviously, which covers the home. If you're in a flood zone, which you can go on the FEMA website and find out if the home you're purchasing is in a flood zone. Usually they tell you on the MLS if it's in a flood zone. I never recommend a client to purchase a property in a flood zone. One, because it's just higher insurance, and two, you just don't want to have to worry about cleaning out 8 feet of water in your basement like my neighbor did one time. Which we're not in a flood zone, and he still had to do that. It was a really freak storm that happened about 10 years ago. But anyway, so there's flood insurance, and then there's utility insurance. And the utility insurance, as a matter of fact, my dad is using it today. He called me and he said that he had a gas line break, and he had used Columbia Gas to get the water, the sewer, the gas line, and the electric lines, the underground lines. They're not covered on your homeowner's insurance, covered so that if one of them should break, they would cover this. And so here he had a gas line break out in his driveway, and they were digging it up this morning. And he said, I got that insurance, and he called them, and they're covering the whole thing. It's going to be like $3,500, and he doesn't have to pay a penny, a deductible or anything. That happened to me probably 15 years ago. My water line broke, and I had that utility insurance on my water bill, and it was $3,000. That had happened to me twice, 2 water line breaks within about 3 years of each other, and each situation was at least $3,000, and they covered it all 100%. So utility insurance is really important. And then the third thing is mine subsides insurance, and that is most homes in Western Pennsylvania were built over a mine. Not all of them, but most of them. And if you Google mine subsidence insurance in Pennsylvania, locator, there's a little map, and you type in the address, and it'll tell you if they recommend you get mine subsidence insurance. And it's pretty much a flat fee, no matter who you get it from. You can just go right on their website, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and buy it. So I get that every year on my house. My insurance, I think, is $250 a year. So it's just a very small fee. And I highly recommend it because there are a couple homes over in Jefferson Hills, and I heard one in Brookline over the last 15 years or so that did have some mine subsidence issues, and that is not covered under your homeowners. And if you have it, and you have a problem and you don't have the insurance, your house is basically condemned, and you have nothing, and you still owe the mortgage. So it's very important to get that insurance for as cheap as it is. So let's talk about timelines and how that works. Typically, when I work with a buyer, we sit down and I go over everything that I'm going over in this workshop, including this timeline. We don't start house hunting or even doing a search for your homes until I hook you up with DJ, and he starts getting you pre-approved for the loan. It's very important for 2 reasons to get pre-approved before you start looking. The first one is in today's market, no seller is going to accept an offer without a pre-approval. And with properties going off the market, like literally in a day, in a couple hours, they're gone. You have to be prepared and have that pre-approval ready to go, so that when you want to find a house that you love, you want to put an offer in, you have to have the pre-approval in the hands when you place the offer. So that's very important. The second one is you really don't know how much you can afford until you go through the process with DJ, and he looks at all your numbers and how much you're making and what your debt is. And he can tell you, this is how much of a house you can afford. And based on what I had, I give him a rule: don't go above the 25%, keep their debt ratio low. We want to make sure that they're happy in their home and they're not going to be house poor. And so he goes through his criteria and he says, this is how much of a house you can afford to buy. If you start doing your searching and looking, let's say maybe he approves you for, let's say, a $200,000 home. But you had me taking you out looking at $250,000 homes. Well, the reality is when we go back and start looking at $200,000 homes, you're going to be very disappointed, because those homes are not obviously going to be as nice as a $250,000 home. So now your whole process turns off with a sour note, and you're not happy, And I used to tell everybody before COVID, I'm Italian. I want everybody hugging at the closing. And I don't think I can say that anymore with COVID. So, the thing is I want it to be a smooth process for you. And if it starts out sour, then it's not going to be a smooth process. I think everybody's first purchase home, any home that they purchase, should be a smooth process. And it's important that we look in the price range. So you've wasted a lot of time and now you're disappointed. On the other hand, maybe you had me looking at houses that are $150,000 and you could afford a $200,000 home. Now, you're going to be wanting to look at $200,000 homes and you've wasted both of our time out looking at $150,000 homes. But it's a better outcome because, you can afford a little bit of a nicer home. So it's really, really important to get that pre-approval first. Let's kind of find out where your price range is. And then we can start doing the house hunting. Now, one thing that DJ's company does that I love is typically when you do this process, let me see if looks like my cursor doesn't work here on the screen, but typically when you do this process, you start house hunting and then you find a house and you make an offer. And in the meantime, once the offer's made and accepted, then the banks will start asking you for all of your information, like your tax returns and your pay stubs and your bank statements and all the things that they need to be able to prove your loan. And that takes time. And if you look up at the top right, it says, like halfway down the process is when you get your mortgage commitment, very close to closing. Well, what DJ does is if you get him all the information in advance up front when you first do the application, he can get that through underwriting, and that's like almost a commitment up front, so that when you go to place your offer, you're in a much more competitive position because you've already gotten them all the documentation. Underwriting's kind of already look through there and say, yeah, this person's really good. And that's almost like paying cash when you put an offer in, and which makes it more competitive for you, especially in this marketplace when it's so competitive for buyers. So you can get all your documents and get that to underwriting. We start doing the house hunting. You find the perfect house, and then you make an offer, and they accept it. You have 15 days after, like, let's say you make an offer and it's accepted October 1st. Starting October 2nd, you have 15 days that you would have for inspections. And I always recommend that you get a home inspection, pest inspection, radon, and sewer inspection. And get those all within the 15 days and get a response back to the seller. And then there's that reply to inspections within 5 days. You have 5 days to go back and forth between you and the seller as to what they're going to do or not do. They don't have to do everything you ask them for. I always tell my buyers that this is not an opportunity for you to go back and beat up the seller. So you put an offer on the property, and you knew it needed a new roof because you could tell just by looking at it. You looked at the disclosure. The disclosure says it's 20 years old, and you know that you need a new roof. You can't then come back on the inspections and say, oh, well, this property needs a new roof. I want you to put a new roof on. That's not what inspections are for, right? So if you're something that if you see that the driveway is really bad and it needs replaced, or the retaining wall's falling down, or you see on the disclosure that the furnace is 25 years old, then you place your offer based on the fact that you know all that, and you're going to have to replace that yourself. What an inspection is for are really for two things. One, to reveal any health and safety issues that maybe we didn't realize were there that we want to ask the seller to fix. So maybe we find some mold, or maybe there's a crack in the foundation and we decide that's too dangerous to buy this house, or maybe there's issues with the electrical. So we want to look for health and safety issues that we would expect that the seller would take care of and repair. And then the rest of the home inspection report is your honey-do list, because you're not purchasing a brand new home and there's going to be things wrong with it. It's not going to be perfect. So you have to take a look at the inspection report, because first time home buyers freak out when they see their home inspection report, because it has every little tiny little thing that's wrong with the home. But that's okay, because then that helps you to decide, well, maybe I want to fix this first, or maybe I want to fix that first. And it helps you put your priority list together. But it's really to get any health and safety issues out of the way for the seller and help you put your honey-do list together. So that's typically what an inspection's for. And then you go back and forth. So usually we have 15 days to do all that. We usually try to get it done in like 8 days instead of 15. We try to get that done as soon as possible, because in the meantime, the appraisal is coming, right? So The bank, now it has all your documentation. You put the application in, they lock in your rate. They're moving through the process. They have to call and order an appraisal. And when they do that, they're not allowed to know who the appraiser is. They just call this third party company and say, we need an appraisal for this property. And then this third party company has a Rolodex of appraisers. And the next one that's in line, that's in that area, is the person that gets picked to do the appraisal. And they go out, they call the seller's agent and say, can I get access to the property? I need to do an appraisal. And then they get that information back to the bank, right? So that happens. Actually, the sales agreement says that the appraisal is supposed to be ordered without delay. And I know a lot of people want to wait till after the inspections are done in order to order to see if they need to order the appraisal, but that's really not legal. You should order the appraisal when the bank puts an application. So, and the problem why people want to wait is when you pay for it, when you have an inspection, that part of the process, you have to pay the inspection company that day that you get the inspections done. So you don't pay that at the closing. So when the services are rendered is when you pay it. The same with the appraisal. As soon as you get the appraisal, the bank's going to call you and say, hey, you got to send us $500 or $550, whatever the cost of the appraisal is, to the bank right then. And then they order the appraisal. And so some people say, well, I don't want to, what if I get the inspections and I find that this house is a disaster and I don't want to buy it? I've already lost $700 for inspections. Why do I want to lose another $500 for the appraisal? So they want to see if maybe for sure they're going to be buying this house. And so they want to wait, but that's really not the legal thing to do. You should really be ordering them in tangent at the same time to do that. So once the appraisal contingency goes through, then you have a mortgage commitment. And when you make an offer on the property, you have to put down hand money. And hand money could be, $1,500. It could be $3,000. It kind of depends on the property itself. But when you sign a legal document, it's not legal unless money change hands. So you have to take some of money, give it to the listing agent up front. They put it in an escrow account, and then that all comes out in the wash at the closing, and you pay less money because you've already given them the hand money. So if you and then you have these commitments, right? You have the inspection contingency, the appraisal contingency, and the mortgage contingency. And if you decide to back out at any point during the contingencies, then you get your hand money back. Okay, because maybe the mortgage didn't go through, so you can get your hand money back. Or you decide when the inspections that you're not buying the property, you get your hand money back. You get back the inspections, but you get your hand back. But if after the mortgage commitment and the appraisal commitment and contingency and the inspection contingency, if you decide to back out after all those are done and passed, then you could lose your hand money should you decide to back out of the deal. Most likely you will. Okay. And the offer consists of the price, seller assist, which we're going to, me and DJ are going to talk about because I'm sure I'm going to screw that up a little bit. When you want them to accept your offer or not, the closing date that you want to have on the property, what inspections you want to have, what inclusions are in the property, and then whether you want to include a home warranty. Those are the main features of an offer when you put an offer in. But so seller assist is you want to buy a house, and I have the situation right now with a young couple we're working with DJ. They're young, they don't have a lot of money, they've got approved for like $160,000 home, but it seems like the closing costs are somewhere around $17,000 to $18,000, which is high for them. And though they want the seller to help them pay some of their closing costs, and that's called seller assist. And they might, and on a conventional loan, you can ask the seller for up to 3%. So on a $160,000 loan, 3% of that is $4,800. So they could say to the seller, I'll pay you the $160,000 that you want for the house, but I need you to help me with my closing costs and pay $4,800 towards my closing costs. So then in essence, the seller is getting $155,200, right? Which he's actually given a discount on the house because that's what he's netting. In this market today, DJ, how many homes do you think get a property with seller assist?
Not nearly as many as there was last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
So
and when we pre-approve somebody that's asking for seller assist, we make it clear that it does weaken their offer.
yeah, it does weaken your offer because most offers today do not ask for the seller to help them with their closing costs. they'll lose the deal because there's so many people. If they get 6 offers and the first 3 offers are full asking price or more without having them ask for closing costs, then they're going to look at those 3 offers and they're not even going to consider yours.
But especially if you have experienced agents, I mean,
You know,
if you
kind
get
of
a
what
20% down, a buyer that's pre-qualified putting 20, 30% down versus one that's putting 5% and needs seller assist, that that's a much tighter file.
Right.
So that you could potentially have more problems. You got less wiggle room if something comes up. So it definitely weakens their offer.
So what I like to try to tell people is, if you have to ask for seller assist like this young couple, my recommendation to them was on this one house, and they still didn't get it, but because somebody offered even higher with no seller assist. But this one house was $160,000, and I said offer them $165,000 because it's only going to, that extra $5,000 on your mortgage is only going to cost you an extra $15 a month, right? So because the interest rates are so low, so I said offer them $165,000 and then ask for the 3% seller assist, because that'll bring them right back down to list price, right? So you have a better chance of them accepting your offer than you do if you just say, well, I'll pay you list price, but then I still need 3% seller assist. So depending on how hot we think a property is, and if it's going to be, like if the house is on a market for a month or 2 months, it's a little bit different. The seller might be willing to negotiate. But right now the houses are on the market for a couple days and then they're gone. And they're usually with multiple offers. So you have to try to put yourself, and that's why I like DJ to get the documentation from everybody up front and get them approved through underwriting. Because now when I give an offer, I could say, look, I just don't have a pre-approval. I got a commitment from the mortgage company, that they're going to, give that a bar the person losing their job or the appraisal doesn't commit or something like that. But as far as all their finances concerned, they are a solid person and they are committed to give them a mortgage on this house. So that just helps when you place an offer for somebody. Okay, we're gonna running a little bit over because we started a little bit late. I only have a couple more slides to go, but it's really important to talk about the closing costs. And they are, so first of all, there's title insurance, and every person who purchases a home has to get title insurance. Pennsylvania has a flat rate that no matter what closing company you use, it's basically the same price. And title insurance covers you because what the closing company does is they go back and research your home, your property. Let's say it's a 100-year-old property. They go all the way back 100 years to see if there are any bad things on the property. Maybe there was an estate that wasn't closed properly or something that was going to cause you an issue to purchase this property with a free and clear title. So the title insurance allows them to go back and research that and then give you an insurance policy. So maybe 5 years down the road, somebody comes back and says, hey, I own a piece of that property from 1942 or something like that. Then you can pull out your title insurance and you can go back to the title company and say, hey, you told me I had free and clear title. You need to go call this person and clear this up and take care of it. So that's what title insurance is for you. There's a broker admin fee for all brokerage firms. They have to handle all your documents, store them for so many years. So they charge a fee. At least Keller Williams is the lowest that I found at $295. Closing company charges $200 to do the closing. You have to record your deed and your mortgage. That's about $182.50 each. You have to escrow your homeowner's insurance. That can be, I just set a guesstimate of $1,000. It depends on the size of your home, but the bank, if DJ wants to give you a loan for $200,000, let's say, he wants to make sure that your homeowner's policy is getting paid, because if that home burns down, he wants to make sure that he's going to get the insurance money, right? So because he has a mortgage against that home. So he wants to make sure you're paying that mortgage insurance. So when you go to get a mortgage, he's going to escrow a year's worth of your homeowner's insurance and include that as part of your payment that we said earlier, that PITI. They're also going to escrow your taxes, because the tax people, they have first dibs at your house. If you could be paying your mortgage all day long, but if you don't pay your taxes, the city can take your house away from you. And now the mortgage company is left with a mortgage and no house because the city owns it. So they want to make sure that you're paying your taxes too. And they include that as an escrow into your mortgage payment and make sure that your taxes are being paid. So that's all becomes one payment for you. You have to do your inspections, like I said, your bank fees, because and this varies, but typically, no matter which bank you go to, it's around $1,400 or $1,500 to do your origination fees and blah, all the different fees that they have. And then you have to pay for the appraisal and then your down payment. Is there anything I'm missing in there, DJ, that you can think of? Oh, I think we lost DJ. Sabrina, are you there?
Did I mute myself or unmute
Oh,
myself?
you muted yourself. There you go. Yeah. Did I miss anything there?
Recording, you got transfer taxes, right?
Oh, that's a big one too. How did
Yeah.
I miss transfer taxes? Okay, so
I
transfer
was trying to
tax,
read your list, and that's the big one I see.
that is a really big one. How come, I don't know how I missed that. So thank you for bringing that up. So transfer taxes could be anywhere from 1% to 2.5% each. So the buyer pays 1 to 2.5% transfer tax, and the seller pays 1 to 2.5% transfer tax. It all depends on the municipality. Like Bethel Park, I think it's 1.33% each, but the city of Pittsburgh is the highest. Their transfer tax is 5%. So it would be 2.5% to the seller and 2.5% to the buyer. So their property taxes are a lot lower, but their transfer tax when you first purchase the property is very high. It's very high. So your closing costs could be much higher. So if you add all this up and you take 3 to 5% down payment, you take, 1.5% for your transfer taxes and your title insurance, this number could be, 14, 15, $17,000, depending
I was
on
gonna say, I always
where you are
usually,
and how much your taxes are. You there? I lost DJ again.
is that there?
Yep, you're there. Okay.
I was gonna say, in general terms, I usually just tell people on average 6% of the purchase price does put you in the ballpark of your total closing costs outside of home inspections.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good rule. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's generic, but it's pretty close. But I mean,
Mhm.
and I know if you get into the city of Pittsburgh where you're already at 2.5% for transfer taxes, it's going to be higher. But
Right.
but that's a good rule of thumb.
Mhm. Okay, so I think this is my last slide. Let me see. Oops, that's my last slide. So let me hit play again. So this just talks about your agent and the different types of agents that are out there. We talked a little bit earlier about a buyer, a dual agent, where you work both sides of the transaction. Otherwise, there's a buyer agent, and obviously, we're going to look out for the best thing for you and try to get you the best deal we can, and make sure we're negotiating for you and looking out for your best interest. And the listing agent is going to do the same thing for the seller. Okay, but when you're in a dual agency, you kind of like back off and you're not really representing either one. You're just taking the buyer's offer, whatever they want to present, and then you got to give it to the seller, and the seller says yes or no, and then you bring it back to the buyer, and you're not really, doing a great justice for either one when you do a dual agency. So your buyer agent, we're going to understand your criteria. We're going to sit down with you, talk with you, try to get a really good feel for what you're looking for to help you find that home. We can point out things that you might not even think about, like a sewer inspection. Like this young man today, he just bought this house in Brookline and he had no idea what a sewer inspection was. And I said, well, I'm not letting you buy a house without one. And good thing, because we had the guy do the sewer inspection today, and it needs a new trap. That's $4,500 that it would have been on him if he would have bought the house without the sewer inspection. So those are things that are important that your agent can help you, because we do this all the time, and we know what to look out for. We help you negotiate the sales agreement. We coordinate with everyone else is doing to make sure there's a smooth closing. Like I created my own checklist of 25 things that have to happen from the time that you put an offer in to the time that it closes. And some of it is my job, and some of it is the other agent's job. Some of it's the closing agent, some of it's DJ's. And I'm just making sure everybody is doing everything that they need to do so that we can have a smooth closing. Right. So we work with you to negotiate the inspections. We make sure that you're using all the legal documents. We can keep you from making big mistakes. Like I had a client, that's where I got my tagline. See at the bottom, it says, Cindy Rack, I've got your back. That was from one of my clients, Faith, last year. She was going to try to purchase a house from her landlord that she was living in and do it without an agent. And somehow she came across me through a letter I sent her, and we talked, and she was going to do something that was actually illegal, and she didn't know it was illegal. She was going to work out a deal because he didn't have the money to fix the property for her before the purchase. So he was going to work out a deal that after she got the mortgage for more money, that she would use some of that money to pay him to fix it. And that's mortgage fraud. And she had no idea. And she's like, oh my God, you had my back. I could have been in jail and not even realize that I did anything wrong. Right. So she made me this big plaque that says Cindy Rack, she has your back. So I like that. I'm going to have to start incorporating that. But we could save you from huge mistakes with you not even realizing it because you don't know the laws. And again, you don't pay the buyer commission if it's an MLS listing. And we can connect you with people like DJ, inspection people, closing companies, all the experts that you need to help the transaction go smooth. So thank you for this. I'm going to stop sharing my computer. If I can use my screen to do that. There we go. And we're back. So I'm going to stop the recording in case we have some personal private questions we want to ask here on this. So thank you everybody for attending.